Dan Bro, welcome to the Financial Freedom Fast podcast. Dan Bro, what is going on, bro?
Hey man, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great to reconnect with you. I know it's been a while since we talked. Dan and I were introduced to each other through the Jason Drees elite group. I remember the first time we hopped on a call with everyone, I saw Dan sitting there and he just had this aura around him that seemed like he was the guy I needed to talk to. So right after that meeting, reached out to him and he's a wealth of knowledge. So really happy to have Dan on the show today. He's got an incredible past in real estate, hiring employees, building businesses, went from somewhere in the hundreds of thousands of debt, almost bankruptcy, to hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue on a monthly basis and multiple seven-figure businesses through wholesaling, buying real estate. Dan, why don't you tell us? Let's start from where you are right now and let's work backwards. What have you built up for yourself?
Yeah, thanks for the intro. Appreciate your kind words. I took a little bit of a different route than a lot of people. What I've found through my years in business is that I really enjoy the coaching and consulting. It's been very natural to me. I've found myself in that role since I was a teenager. And so I have leveraged that to be involved in multiple businesses where I can utilize my experience and my natural abilities to basically get a revenue share in exchange for my experience and so doing that with a few different companies around the country right now in the residential real estate space. It's a great return on investment for me on my time. Now, the one thing I've been working to get away from is the trading hours for dollars, which is okay for a certain period of time or okay forever if you're making a great hourly wage. But I have young kids, you can see by all this stuff, the artwork behind me, and I don't want to be stuck working 70, 80, 90 hours a week when I have young kids that I want to see and spend time with. I utilize certain things, like I'll make a system or a process and then use that moving forward so that the next time I do something with somebody, it takes up way less time. And so I use that to just leverage my time. And with that, been able to do a lot of things that maybe most people wouldn't be able to do if they were doing just the hours for dollars equation.
So you used a skill that you built up, natural knack for coaching that you felt you had, and you used that as a way to leverage yourself into equity and revenue shares in different businesses. Did that always come natural to you? Was this a big skill that you had to build on yourself, or did you realize that from a young age that you were good at coaching?
Yeah. So when I was maybe, I don't know, 2 years old, my dad actually owned a Tony Robbins franchise. So it was around me since I was really
Right.
young, all the coaching and stuff. And then started reading personal development books at a really young age. So it was just really natural. It's like when you learn something and you find it useful for yourself, you naturally want to share it with other people. So
Right.
that type of a talk track just became very normal for me. And as I learned more things, I wanted to share that with others. And through that, you get either some resistance or you have to help people overcome their bad habits or things like that. And so that becomes a coaching conversation. And then through my various jobs and businesses and things, I've had to develop more as a coach and as a leader, and I really prefer the coach role as opposed to the role. Managing people is the hardest part about business, in my opinion. And when I can just be a coach or a consultant, I have to do way less or none of that. It allowed me to just lean on my strengths and do way more of what I wanted to do.
I love that. What was your first soiree into an official coaching? Was it real estate coaching? What?
I honestly got started when I was maybe like 13 or 14 because I started researching nutrition and exercise on a deeper level. And I would start writing workout programs or diet programs, and my friends or family members would want to learn about what I was doing. I was on a sports team, and people would be like, "Hey, getting way stronger, you can lift way more or
Mm.
whatever. And they would just ask questions about what I was doing and how to do it. So that became super normal to me at a pretty young age. I just fell into that role because people were asking about what I was doing.
You started around 13, 14. What did life look like after that? When did you get started into this big business realm that you're in, buying real estate, wholesaling real estate, and leveraging yourself into these businesses with this coaching expertise? What did that portion of your life look like?
Yeah, I had been involved in various sales roles since college, or actually before college, but got really heavy into it. Learned the Sandler sales system, which, if anyone listening doesn't know about the Sandler sales system, highly recommend it. One of the
Mhm.
best ones out there. It's evergreen, it'll never not make sense to use. So, learned that in college, and I've been professionally selling for I don't know how many years now, 15, 16 years, and continued to study professional sales and human psychology and human behavior. And so after college was in some various sales roles, was in the fitness industry, and then got into medical device sales. And while I was there, that's when I started investing in real estate, doing some flips on the weekends and nights, and buying some rentals. And then after not too long from buying from other wholesalers, I saw they were making $15,000, $20,000 pop on every
Mm.
house that I bought from them. And they were doing fraction of the work, it seemed to me. So I said, man, I gotta find a way to get these deals myself. And that's where my wholesaling journey started.
What did your portfolio look like when you started to transition to this wholesaling model?
Yeah, I never had that many rentals. I got to, I don't know, five, six, seven, or I had one double and a few single family rentals in the suburbs, and I didn't like it that much.
Right.
I didn't have enough to really hire a management team, and I didn't. Because of my experience, I didn't really want to get more. It just wasn't like dealing with the tenants and toilets and all that stuff. I, I didn't want to do it. And where I am in New York State, it's not a landlord friendly place. So I abandoned that earlier on. I know a lot of people in New York that do well with it, but also when COVID hit, I know a lot of them that got hurt
He got
with not
smacked.
paying tenants. Part of me says, "Oh, I wish I had held more of the hundreds of properties I've wholesaled." Other times, I say, "Man, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that." Yeah, so I went a different route with the recurring cash flow. I decided to go the sort of it's like a consulting for rev share route, and
Mm.
that is very low stress. I never get any calls late at night saying, "Hey, something's overflowing or this needs fixing." I just have a pretty regular cadence, and I get the better information and coaching I provide, the more I get in return because they do more or better deals. I really that equation is that I can go read a book, listen to a podcast or interview somebody or whatever, use that information, bring it to my partners, and then
Right.
they do better. And now suddenly I get paid more, even though I'm not spending any more time with them or any more money invested.
You transitioned from rentals, went to the wholesale side. I'm assuming you learned how to wholesale, did really well with wholesale, and now you using what you have learned in wholesale as the coaching side? You go to wholesalers who want to wholesale more, you coach them how to do this well, and instead of getting maybe you get a flat fee or something like that too, but instead of that being your only source of revenue, you're also getting the rev share from the growth that they're seeing in their wholesaling business.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly it. Usually there will be an upfront fee just because upfront I give them a lot of stuff. I give them a lot of my processes and systems and yeah, all sorts of things like that to really get them up and running and to make sure that they have skin in the game. But I also, what I do is I give them, they essentially earn that money back over the first handful of deals. So
Right.
the first handful of deals, it's at a lower percentage. So they're basically earning that investment back. And then once they reach that threshold, then it raises up and then my incentive goes up dramatically.
This has been something you've been building on for quite a bit of time here. Why did you start doing all this? Why go real estate and buy real estate and then say, no, I'm going to switch to this? What's your driving factor?
Number one, I always honestly struggled working for other people, not having, if you're familiar with the disc profiles or predictive index or anything like that, like I'm very high drive, have high need for autonomy and just
Mm,
being able to basically go at my own pace and do what I want, basically it.
right.
So it was always pretty difficult for me to work with other people or work for other people if I didn't work in a very open, free and real estate. When I was interested in it, I just went around and I interviewed a ton of real estate investors,
Mm,
anyone I could around here, and learned as much as I could, and found out that in not that long of a time, relatively speaking, you can get to where you're pretty much controlling your own schedule. That being said, sometimes that means you choose to work 60,
mm-hmm.
70, 80 hours, but you also have the choice to, hey, I want to take this afternoon off. I don't have to check with somebody to do that. The freedom was a big part of it. I think it's time and money freedom. Not having a cap on my income was a huge driver, and not having a ton of restrictions on my time or how I spend my time were the other two big things.
Mm. And what are you doing with that time and money freedom? So this Financial Freedom Fast podcast is all about getting to that point where we have the time freedom, we have the location freedom, we can do what we want. We wake up in the morning and there's no one telling us you need to be in the office at 8 a.m. and you got to get dressed, take your shower, get into work, do the driving, all that. You have the freedom to build your schedule for yourself. What does that look like for you now? Is it a lot of family time, business time? What's your life look like?
Yeah, I choose to work from home so I can spend as much time with family as I possibly can. So my commute is about 10 seconds. So that number one is huge for me. I make sure that I can work out 5 to 6 times. I make sure I can get as much sleep as I feel that I need that day. I go hiking, I read, I make sure that I keep a weekly scorecard of my activities to make sure that I have a balanced life, that I can get my journaling time in, my
Mm,
mobility work, get my cardio in, my outside of the house time interacting with other people, and obviously get my chores and whatnot done.
yeah.
But I find that for me, especially when working at home, it's super easy to blur the lines of work and home life. And usually what happens is that work starts to expand, and because you can just, oh, let me just hop up to my office real quick and do something, or let me just check this email, or let me just write somebody this. And so it's really easy to let that take over all your time. I found it super important to set boundaries. So I use time blocking. Like I have my weekly schedule in an Excel file, all blocked out. I have my recurring meetings, my workouts, my
Mm-hmm.
reading time, my time with my family. Everything is blocked out on there. With
Mm,
some flex time, of course. But then it's, for me, that's super helpful because then I can see very clearly where am I spending my time and is that
mm,
in line with my priorities. I find that's where a lot of people get lopsided or
mm,
out of balance, is that they'll say, oh, I have all this freedom, I'm not working for somebody else now,
mm.
and then they just go all in on a few things, and that's where you see people that are like rich and totally unhealthy, or have terrible relationships or whatever, and that's never been my goal.
Right.
So I always wanted to maintain like balance to a degree in those areas. And saying that, though, that I do believe earlier on in
Mm,
the process of getting your career going, there's going to be more imbalance. Like
mm.
you're going to need to work harder up front to just get off the ground. It's the metaphor of a rocket ship or an airplane or whatever. It's like a rocket ship uses whatever 99% of its fuel just to get out of
Get
Earth's
up.
atmosphere,
Right.
like
Right.
just to get off the ground. So it's like that's needed to a degree. Like you're going to have to work hard so that you don't have to work as hard later.
Right.
Or maybe you still work hard later, but you don't have to work as much because
Mm.
a lot of that groundwork is laid. I do think for people like just starting out, that's a misconception of the balance and time,
Work life balance,
work
right?
life
We need
balance, all that
right.
stuff. I think at the start, it's probably going to be a little lopsided. And as long as like you recognize that and are ready for it, that's going to be okay. And then I would say keep a regular pulse, whether it's weekly, monthly, quarterly, on like checking your schedule and see, is it actually lining up with my priorities? Does
Right.
it align with my long-term vision of where I actually want to go? And because otherwise, like, what's the point of having time freedom if it's filled up with stuff you don't actually want to do or isn't actually going to get you where you want to go?
Right.
Mistake I see a lot of people making in business, in their life, and whatever. It's like they're doing a lot of work, but they're
Mm.
not actually heading a direction they want to go. They
Mm.
get so caught up in, like, in any business, people are always about scale. It's like
Mm.
that's actually not right for everybody. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody should scale. Not everybody should be a CEO. It's not the right role for everybody. Not everybody's going to be happy running this big team. Like some
Right.
people, they make more money, have less stress, and have just a better overall life if they're running a lean, small team where they don't have to worry about a lot of other people. They just do their job
Right.
well. Like for some people, that's way better. But they get caught up with listening to all these other people talking about scale and growing and
Right.
10xing, which all sounds super sexy, but the process of it is not. I can tell you from personal experience, it's not sexy, like growing like that. It's
Right.
frustrating. People are challenging. It's the most challenging part about business. That's where I believe that having a really clear vision of where you want to go and what you want your life to look like and
Right.
regularly referring back to that is so important so you stay on track.
I love that, especially on the fitness side. That's something that hits home with me because when we were in this group 6, 7 months ago, I still had my job and I was big into spending my time doing the gym and all that type of stuff. And then once I let the job go, I'm sitting here like I just have all of this time to do whatever. And it could be so easy to just get lost and be like, nah, I'm gonna hang out today, not really do anything. And I went back to those initial goals in my head. What did I say I was going to do when I reached this point? I was going to have time to go to the gym and I was going to get to go on hikes and I was going to get to do all this work and focus on passion projects, things like this podcast that I can put time into now. Awesome information, and time blocking has been pretty crucial for me as well. I actually started using a calendar, Google Calendar now. Now I want to dig into scaling, and we're also talking a little bit about freedom, right? And I think bringing in employees to your company, they can allow you, one, to either escape your business, not escape as a bad term, but to take a step back from your business and let someone else be involved in it. And they can also help you to scale your business and grow your business. I think there's two main benefits there. Let's dive into that. Why hire an employee? And when? At what stage? When do you hire an employee?
Yeah, I think I know you're not going to love this answer, but it depends. Obviously, if you don't have the financial resources and it would make it really challenging month to month, then you're not ready. But let's move forward with this conversation, assuming you have some financial resources, enough revenue or enough savings or whatever
Right.
to hire somebody, at least knowing that, hey, I can at least float them for 3 months if nothing got any better. So that's number one, making sure that you have enough of a cushion to be able to float their pay for that period of time, unless they're commission only. But either way, you don't want to hire someone and then have to let them go 30 days later because you can't pay them.
Right.
That's morally not right. Making sure you have that buffer is super key. And then you're always going to do your best work in whatever you like doing the most and whatever you're best at. That's where you're going to add the most value. So if I say, hey, if I'm a residential real estate wholesaler and I have a background in sales, my time is probably best spent talking with homeowners. So if I'm spending a quarter of my day doing admin work, like pulling lists or scraping them for bad data or whatever, or just like emails and all this stuff, I'm losing a quarter of my value to the business. And
Mhm.
so if I can get somebody a few things, who enjoys that type of work and who's at least 80% as good as I am at it now, and has the potential for being better and is willing to be paid less to do it than I would have to pay myself, those are all great reasons to hire somebody. And then it allows you to do more of where your highest value is. So a lot of people forget that there's the cost of hiring somebody, but what's the opportunity cost of not hiring somebody? So if you say, yeah, but I can't, I'm only making $5,000 a month in this business right now. It's really not very consistent. And a quarter of my day is spent doing this stuff. It's okay, what would your day or your month look like if you freed up that 2 hours a day? What would you be able to do? What kind of results would you be able to produce? That's the opportunity cost that you're giving up by not hiring somebody. So that part a lot of people forget. They just look at the cost of hiring somebody and they forget to look at what would actually change if I did. But oftentimes, what I find useful for how my brain works is I'll put together a pro forma, which is a fancy word for financial projections about the way we think things might go based on certain changes. So I would say, okay, here's my business now. And if I hire them, here's my new costs. But if I hire them, here are my new potential opportunities based on my newfound time. And obviously, you need to account for training them and managing them and all that stuff. But if you hire them well and they are able to do their job, they should be freeing up some of your time. Otherwise, there's literally no purpose to hiring.
To hire them, right?
In which that can happen, though, is sometimes people, they will, whether it's they hire the wrong person, they don't know how to train or manage them or whatever it is, you'll end up hiring somebody and you're like, I'm working more now. I'm not saving any time. It's okay, maybe you weren't ready to hire them. So I would say for being ready to hire somebody, know exactly what you want to be doing, know what you need. Like, what are those lowest level activities that you just don't want to do? It's like when it comes time to do that, you just like you put it off, you procrastinate on it, it drains your energy, it's not producing revenue or whatever it is. Those kind of things are probably the first types of things that you should get off your plate, because then you'll enjoy what you're doing more, you'll have more energy around it, you'll have more time to bring in revenue, assuming you're halfway decent at sales. So those things are so key. And if you find yourself like really struggling with the time of them taking up so much of it, then you probably need to look at what are the expectations you're setting. How did you describe what they're actually responsible for and accountable to? And how did you prepare for bringing them on board? Did they just start one day and you're like, hey, all right, I need you to do this. It's okay. You need to break it down to the level where like a fourth grader could understand it. That's how simple you need to make your instructions. So if you don't have that stuff ready, and I learned from experience, when the first time I hired my first VA, like I did not have that stuff ready. I'm like, holy cow, this stuff is taking so much of my time. But then what I learned is like, all right, all I need to do is I can use Zoom or Loom or any of those things. And just when I'm going through it, I just record it and I talk through it as I do it. All right, so here's what I do next. This is what I'm looking for. Here's what I found. I like this and I'm going to put that here, whatever it is. And then now that becomes part of my training. So now I've gone through all their duties on my own. And then when they start, I just give them, hey, here's all your stuff. Here are all the videos for how you need to do it. And I can even type it up or use an auto transcriber like Otter. I use that on literally all my meetings, otter.ai. I don't get any kickback for that. I just think it's a great service.
I've used that as well. It is an amazing service.
Yeah. So you can use that to like take that and put it into a Word document. Then now they have this training manual for how do I do my job. You give them, here's your expectations for your role. Here's how you know you're being successful, because that's important for them. They need to know, how do I win at this role? Right? What does that look like? What does winning look like in this role? And then giving them regular feedback. Like I said, people are the hardest part about business. And so more often than not, people's first hire doesn't work out. And usually their second and their third and their fourth and their fifth don't work out either. It's pretty rare that it really does. Or it does work out and either they found a unicorn and it works out
Mm-hmm.
great. They hold on to them even though they're underperforming or they're
Mm.
not the right person for the role. Just because
Right.
they're afraid to make a change, they don't want to go through the hiring process again and firing process. They say, "Oh, this person knows so much. If they left, I would have no idea where to pick up. I would have so much more work." So people get scared, but that goes back to the creating training manuals. If you have someone working for you, you should be prepared that, hey, they are gone tomorrow. What do you do? So, one of the roles of their job should be to create training manuals on literally everything they do, step by
Everything.
step, so that if someone started the next day, they would be able to pick up right where they left off.
Right.
So that part of it, like if you're not ready, if you don't feel like someone could step into your business and get into that role and start being productive within a few days, you're not ready yet. Like you need to create those basic trainings first, make sure you're financially ready, make sure you know how you're going to fill your newfound time, and then I would say you're ready.
Dude, you just crushed from start to finish. How do you look at it psychologically, right? The time value, your value on your time, and move the lower value task to someone else. And then all the way through to even bringing on this new employee, finding the employee, and making these training videos. And that's actually something that I'm doing right now. I've got someone I hired in house as a property manager that we're creating all the systems, making the videos, on day one, I had her an SOP form and she basically followed this document that I created. And now she's making videos on how to work our system and she's building the training manual, which has been great. And for those of you that don't know, the reason why I brought Dan on today is because when I had that first conversation with, he looked at me with four heads when I was like, Dan, I've got this intern who said he'll come and work for me for free and I'm not sure if I want to take him. And Dan was like, why would you not take him on if he's going to do this for you for free and you could provide some value to him and take some stuff off your plate? So that was a very transformative moment in my life that opened me up to even the possibility of hiring this VA coming in. Or my I've got some VAs now. I've got my property manager. It opened me up to a lot. So I thank you for that, Dan. Question though, starting off at the beginning of bringing in an employee, how do you calculate what your time is worth? How do you look at
That's an interesting question. And I think a lot of people get this wrong, honestly. So some people will say, calculate how much money you want to make and then in a yearly basis, how much money you want to make, divide that by 2000. And 2000 is just 40 or 50 weeks out of the year at 40 hours a week. So if you're working a normal schedule, you have 2 weeks of vacation, that's 2000 hours of working time. So then you get your hourly rate and they say, all right, then you figure out how much each activity is worth on your schedule, and anything that's worth less than that amount, you hire out. That's good in theory, but the reality is that if you say, I want to make $100 an hour, okay, but can you afford to pay someone $80 an hour to do something? Maybe not. And maybe so there's like your aspirational goals of making $100 an hour or $500 an hour or whatever it is. But then there's the reality of where you at now. And because you're not just going to suddenly go from making $30 an hour to $150 an hour. There's steps in between. So I
levels?
would say this is something to reevaluate on a regular basis and say, all right, now that I'm making this much and my goals are here, what am I no longer willing to do? Or what
Mm,
can I hire out for that would allow me to leverage my time so that I can make more money?
mm.
So I think it's an evolving thing. Like it's not, oh, I want to make $1 million. So I'm not going to do anything for less than $500 an hour. It's that's silly. So you're
Right.
telling me that you're not going to do a $300 an hour task and you're going to go hire someone else to do it? No, probably not. Like you're not there yet. It's like it may not make sense. Like it sounds great in theory, but the reality is like much more of a stepped approach. So I always say I use it's a time study. Basically what I do, I recommend this to people, is record like 3 to 5 days of your time in
Mm-hmm.
15-minute intervals. So you can do it on a spreadsheet or whatever, but every 15 minutes you record what you've done for the last 15 minutes. You do that for 3 to 5 days straight. Then afterwards you review it. And I like to look at it a few different ways. Like one, it gives me clarity on where I'm spending my time and how much of it I'm wasting on things that aren't important. Oh crap, I thought I was on Instagram for 5 minutes. Turns out I was on it for an hour and a half. That's
Right.
a common thing that people will
Right.
find out. And you can see, okay, so where am I wasting time? What's actually taking more of my time than I thought? And then and then I like to categorize things. What are my revenue generating activities and how much of my time is spent doing that? What are the activities that give me energy? What are the activities that take energy away? And then once I have that, number one, I'm going to first try to outsource or delegate or automate or eliminate altogether any of the activities that are not revenue generating and take away my energy. Like those are the last things I should be doing. So ideally, you want to be spending the vast majority of your time in the things that give you energy. And if you are the right person for it, are also generating revenue. Now, I say that because if you're not naturally gifted at sales or anything like that, then maybe you should hire somebody or partner with somebody that is good at revenue generation. So I don't want to like pigeonhole in that anybody into that role, but no matter what, you should be doing things that give you energy. If you wake up and you're like, ugh, I don't want to do this stuff, okay, that's probably draining your energy, those activities. But if you're like, oh yeah, let's do this. I can't, like, I want to do it more. I can't wait. I wish I had more time to do this stuff. That's probably giving you energy. If you're constantly thinking about it in a positive way, you're generating ideas around it, it's probably giving you energy. So you want to do more of that stuff. So, because that's where you'll be in that flow state, or you'll give it more effort, or when you're enjoying something, you'll just do it better. It'll be more natural. You'll want to learn more about it. I would say starting there is a great spot of what are the things that either you don't like or you're not good at or just drain your energy. If it meets all three of those criteria, that's the first stuff you should get
Get
rid
it
of.
out.
Some people use there's like a 4 quadrants. It's just a box and you turn it into 4 boxes. So you draw a line and another line in it. And upper left is things that you love and you're great at. Upper right is things that you like and you're good at. Bottom left is things that you like and you're not good at, or you're good at it but you don't like it,
Don't
and
like
right
it.
is you don't like it and you're not good at it.
So you got to get rid of those don't like it and not good at it right away.
Yeah, so
And
basically you're trying to eliminate everything in the bottom right and then the bottom left and then the top, and then trying to keep all your stuff in the top left. Now, understanding that there's always going to be stuff in any job or any business or any role that you're not going to love 100%. But ideally, at least 70% of your time is spent doing things that give you energy and you really like.
And that 15-minute exercise that Dan told you about, he told me about that on our first call. And it's amazing to see, like, where am I actually spending my time? And it makes you more conscious of, I was definitely like scrolling through Instagram and then 15 minutes, I would set a 15-minute timer on my phone and I see, oh my God, I just spent the last 15 minutes. It makes you more conscious, keeps you out of that. You write down exactly what you're doing, and then you can rank them on the system that Dan just talked about. So we are getting towards the end of the show here. One thing that I did want to touch on before one of these final questions here, you had mentioned that you think hiring, bringing on employees nowadays, it's difficult. The landscape is changing. What are some mistakes that are being made, and what should people avoid in hiring today to expand their business or to get themselves out of their business?
Yeah, it's interesting, especially in the real estate space. We're both in that space, so I'll reference that right now. But the past 2 years or so have been so forgiving. Houses have been just appreciating nonstop for basically 2 years up until a few months ago, that
Mm.
any Joe Schmo could make money in real estate. And a lot of people did. And you could be totally make a ton of mistakes and have no idea what you're doing. No business acumen, no processes, no systems. And
Mm.
just because you had the property one week and the next week it was worth 30,000 more, now you look like a genius. That covered up a lot of people's mistakes. And so people got away with a lot of bad business practices for quite a while. And now that the market has been slowing dramatically, buyers are slowing down, interest rates are crazy, prices are plummeting. And so it's made a lot of those weaknesses revealed. And cash flow is tight for a lot of wholesalers. And that's largely because they were reliant on systems that were poor or buyers that were the easy out. Like if you were selling to hedge funds and that was all you were focused on, those hedge funds are not buying by and large anymore. And so if 90% of your business is to one source and that one source is suddenly gone, like you're scrambling. And I'm seeing that
Mm-hmm.
around the country with talking with investors every week. So I say that with a lot of the advice that people have been getting over the past few years may have been good advice then, but it could sink your business right now. In the past, people were saying, oh, the market's so hot. You got to double, triple your marketing spend. You got to hire, you got to scale. I think almost the opposite right now. You need to hold on to some extra cash. You need to drop your expenses. You need to run a leaner team right now. You need to focus on your systems and processes and leadership. You need to thin out the herd a little bit.
Right.
And this is actually a great time for good business people, for good investors, because the bad ones are running out of cash and out of business. So if you know what you're doing and you're still in it, you're still surviving, now is the time to really get better at your craft, because things will turn around. It's a cycle. They call it real estate cycle for a reason, or
Right.
business cycle, because it's not always going to keep going down. It's up and down. It's up and down for all of history, and it always trends up, but that's over the long haul. So if you can weather this storm and be there when opportunity is there, which is coming, and you're running a lean team, a lean, efficient, and effective team, that's going to open you up for so much more opportunity, whether it's buying a ton of properties at cheap discounts, or just being able to snatch up great talent because other people are
Mm-hmm.
laying off, or whatever it is, or creating new partnerships for people that want to work with you. Whatever it is, if you like now more than ever, focusing on those fundamentals of what makes a good business work, like you got to do that now, because it will just put you heads and tails above everybody else that's not focusing on that stuff right now.
I love it. Focus on hiring well and build out your systems and processes to make sure you can thrive. And I feel the same way about this market right now. I think over the next year or so, there's going to be a lot of people getting pushed out, but we'll see. Nobody can predict the future exactly. So we'll see what happens there. Dan, last question. What is one question or topic that you wish I would have asked or covered? And how would you have answered that question, or how would you have expanded upon that topic?
That's an interesting one. I think the one thing I wish people wouldn't do is just get so sucked into either listening to too many people or listening to other people and drowning out their own voice. And going back to something I mentioned earlier was like two major mistakes I see people make is they'll go and get into like education mode, and they start listening to everyone they possibly can, and they try and get information from here, from all these different places, and then try to cobble it together and make it work. That may or may not work. Usually it doesn't. And what I say is like, if you're getting into something new, or you're trying to grow in a certain area, go all in on one strategy, on one coach, on one system, and get really good at that. Like what I see so often is like people try to get creative before they even have the fundamentals down.
Mm.
It's like they're starting something new, and they if they're the visionary CEO type, they naturally have a lot of ideas. They're like, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this. If we're referring it to sports, it's like they're trying to run a trick play before they even know how to dribble. It's like,
Right,
let's get the basics down. You
right.
don't need to run all these advanced things before you even have the fundamentals. I would say save your creativity for later once you have the basics down, because
Hmm.
that's what people are running into now. It's like they never got the basics down because the market was just so good. The team they were playing against was so looked like they were stars. But now here's the real competition and their flaws are getting exposed. That and just again listening to your own vision, setting that clearly, like knowing what you're going after and sticking to it, not getting swept up in the appeal of scale and growth if that's not what you really want. So really referring to what's important to you is, I think, just crucial. And if I have to repeat it again, I will.
And I think this podcast has honestly taken us on a pretty good journey there because we started off with that concept of listening to yourself, knowing why you're doing all of this. And then we focus on building out your business, doing what you can with employees, but also keeping in mind that back vision in your head. What did you want to be doing with your time? And then if you're doing something right now and it makes financial sense, if you're doing something right now that didn't fit in with that vision and it's not a high value task, bring other people in to fill that role. So I think we've covered a great amount and I appreciate your time, Dan. Where can the listeners and watchers find you online?
Yeah, Instagram's probably the best place. It's at Action Dan Bro. And yes, my last name is actually pronounced Bro, even though it looks like Brault. I just figured I'd make it easy for everybody on there. So it's Action Dan Bro, BRO. If anyone wants to talk shop, always happy to. Love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, and if you're looking at to get your mind into a new perspective, Dan has helped me out, and I'm sure he could do it for you too. So, from the Financial Freedom Fast podcast, we thank you, Dan, for your time, and we will see everyone next week.